Castles may seem like they're invincible, but even one of the most basic siege engines can actually destroy them pretty easily. In medieval times, castles were built to withstand attacks from other armies, acting as fortified residences for nobility and houses for royalty. But during the Middle Ages, there were several siege weapons that could end a castle's reign in just a few minutes. And we've gone, show you how these incredible inventions destroyed some of the most protected structures ever made. Attacking a castle was no easy feat. It usually took a well-coordinated army weeks or even months to capture one. In fact, the longest siege in history lasted a whopping 83 days. That was the Siege of Constantinople in 1453. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Castles weren't built to be taken quickly, which meant that sieges were an expensive and lengthy ordeal. So many rulers and military commanders sought out ways to end the standoff more rapidly. Enter siege weapons. These were devices designed to overcome the obstacles a castle presented, such as high walls and protective towers. So here are 5 of the most popular medieval siege weapons that really did help attackers breach castles. Battering ram. The battering ram is the most iconic medieval siege weapon, but how effective was it really? Well, its design was fairly straightforward. A long wooden pole was attached to a heavy weight at one end, creating a makeshift battering crane. When the army approached the castle walls, men would charge forward, swinging the beam back and forth until it connected with the wooden or sometimes iron gate. Once the ram hit the target a few times, the structure would eventually collapse, allowing the soldiers to enter. The honor of chivalry was a code of conduct followed by European knights. From the 11th through the 16th centuries, and according to its laws, a gate could only be attacked at night. But if the defenders chose to keep their gate open during the night, the attacking army had permission to break it down. And that's exactly what the battering ram was for. This siege engine helped conquer many castles during the Middle Ages, although it wasn't as effective against stone buildings. After all, if the attacking army didn't break through the door, the ram would just bounce off the stone wall. Siege tower. Siege towers were used throughout medieval times, but were most common during the Crusades. They consisted of a large wooden tower mounted on wheels that would roll up to the castle wall. Soldiers would then climb to the top of the tower where archers or a catapult would hurl boiling oil onto the defenders below. Eventually, the attackers would use ladders to climb down into the castle and open the gates from the inside. One of the most famous siege towers was the Tower of Antioch, which was used during the First Crusade. Although the tower was captured and destroyed by Muslim forces, it remains a pivotal moment in medieval warfare. Catapult. Catapults come in various shapes and sizes, but they all have the same goal: to hurl objects over long distances. Medieval catapults were typically used to fling rocks and other debris over the castle walls, killing or injuring the defenders. They also served another purpose, too. Ever wonder how castles became so popular? Well, because they were so expensive to build, often a lord or ruler would charge others a fee to use their castle as a defensive structure. Those who paid the fee were allowed to live within the castle's protection, offering cheap and easy fortification. However, those who couldn't afford to pay were out of luck, unless they had a catapult. Someone who couldn't afford the fees would simply use this siege engine to destroy the castle, then move right in. Trebuchet. If catapults weren't enough, there was always the trebuchet. Unlike catapults, which launched projectiles by swinging a weighted arm, trebuchets used a massive crane to hurl objects. The crane would lift a large rock or piece of debris and then drop it over the castle wall. Since trebuchets could launch objects twice as heavy as themselves, they were formidable siege weapons. Sometimes the projectiles were explosive too. During the 15th century, one Italian engineer designed a trebuchet that could launch small cannons over the castle wall. Once the cannon landed, the soldiers would immediately start firing, wreaking havoc on the unsuspecting defenders. Mines. Not all siege weapons were large and loud. In fact, some of the most effective siege engines were quiet and deadly. During medieval times, a tunnel would be dug under the castle wall using mining equipment. The tunnel would be dug at an angle so that it would lead right under the foundation of the castle's main gate. Once the tunnel was complete, a small group of soldiers would sneak inside the gate's foundation and place a large amount of gunpowder. Then they would run away as fast as possible. As soon as the tunnel was empty, the gunpowder would explode, destroying the gate and allowing the rest of the army to pour through. As technology improved during the Middle Ages, so did siege weapons. What was once a painstaking and lengthy process became much more rapid. Now entire castle walls could be destroyed in minutes, allowing armies to claim victory in hours instead of weeks. To learn more about medieval life, stay tuned for more information.